Hello everyone, I am Kaylee Bateman, the content director at She Can Code, and today we're having an extra special roundtable discussion with several incredible ladies from Foundry. We're discussing collaborative innovation, unveiling the world of research teams, and I've got incredible guests with me today. I've got Mairead Grogan, Johanna Barbier, Linda Hogg, and Sophia Rosney with me. Thank you so much, ladies. We're going to go to each of them in a minute, but today we're going to share how they seamlessly unite all of their skills, each playing a crucial role in the development of innovative solutions at Foundry. Welcome, ladies. Thank you all so much for joining me. Mairead, can we start with you? A little bit about you would be fantastic, please.
Yeah, perfect. Hi everyone. My name is Mairead, and I'm a senior research engineer at Foundry. I guess I've been at Foundry about 4 years now. I'm working on the research team just with a couple of different projects. And now I'm working on the AI or machine learning team. So looking into some machine learning tech in research. And I guess to give you guys a bit of a background into who I am, I started my career, I guess, doing an undergraduate degree in maths. So I started by doing maths, but I found it quite abstract and I kind of wanted to get into some real world applications and problems. And I'd heard that areas like animation and graphics can be a really big employer of mathematicians. So I decided to jump into that space and see if I could transition my skill set into something a bit more creative and in that kind of animation domain. So I went on to do a master's degree in computer science around the area of graphics and image processing. And when I was doing that master's, I got my first taste of research. I got to do a bit of a research project, and I really loved the ability to dig into a problem and really solve hard problems in interesting ways. So after my master's, I decided to keep going down the research route, and I went on to do a PhD in the same area of graphics and computer vision and image editing. And after that, kept going with the research and went on to do a postdoc. So it basically just means I did 6 years of research in academia, so in university, and going to conferences and writing academic papers. But I guess what I found when I was doing research in academia, even though I loved it and I got to solve some really nice problems in this really interesting space of visual effects and graphics, I found that I was a bit too far from the artist and from the end user. I found that I was creating tools that people weren't using necessarily. They were being published in papers and I was talking about them at conferences, but people weren't really getting their hands on them. And I couldn't get any feedback from people about whether they were useful or whether people wanted to use them or whether they were solving a real life problem. So in order to get that bit closer to artists and to get my tools that I was making into the hands of end users, I decided to shift into research in industry. And that's when I joined Foundry. So I joined Foundry, then the research team at Foundry, to do just that. So to bring the tools that I'm making into the hands of the artist and to have that nice feedback loop between customers and what we're doing so that we can make sure that we're solving real problems that people are actually having and getting the tools into the hands of the people who need it. So yes, that's what I've been doing then for 4 years then as part of the research team at Foundry. And it's been great. It's been a really nice journey to get to where I want to be. So that's what I'm doing, and that's my intro, I guess.
Incredible. You have quite a traditional background, but also a creative background, which is not always what people think about working in technology. So today's discussion is going to be super interesting with that creative side of your experience. Johanna, yourself, what about you?
Yes, so hi everyone, my name is Johanna Barbier. I am a senior research engineer in machine learning at Foundry. I am part of the artificial intelligence research team, so I'm on the same team as Mairead. And I have been with Foundry for about 5 years now. Since I've joined, I've been able to work on many smart tools for visual effects, and these tools are being used by artists today, which is really nice. And as well on my side, a few words of how I got there and how I got into a research engineering position. Well, it says in high school, I guess I loved many subjects and I was hesitating between going into art or science. And I guess science won, probably highly influenced by my parents at the time. So I ended up joining math and physics preparatory school for 2 years and then doing 2 master degrees in science. So I did one in France specialized in virtual reality, and one in Ireland, in Dublin, specialized in computer graphics and machine learning. And I think that something that's interesting about this journey is that I knew I didn't want to do only science. I wanted to work in an area that would mix science with other topics I enjoyed, like art or languages. I wanted it to be fun and exciting, and that's why I geared my education from more pure science towards more visual applications like computer graphics or virtual reality. And it's also around that time in this master's that I started wanting to work in the entertainment industry. So like in movies, games, animation. And luckily for me, my thesis supervisor at the time got me in contact with Dan Ring, who was the head of research at Foundry. And that's where I got to learn that there was an open, that's where I learned that there was an open position for creating tools for artists. And that really suited what I was looking for. And that's how I started being a research engineer. And I'm really happy to be part of this discussion. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for sharing that background, incredible background in science as well. And again, another topic that you don't think, but maybe at the time you didn't think as when as a student that you would go into something very creative, but along that path you realised actually you can move into a creative role. So that is super interesting. Our community are going to absolutely love the fact that you said you started in science. Linda, yourself.
Yeah, hello everyone. So I'm a research engineer on the real-time team. And I've been with Foundry for coming up to 5 years, but I was on maternity leave 1 year. So that brings it down to 4 effectively. So in terms of my background, I started in math as well, seems to be a theme here. So I did a PhD in math, aeroacoustics more specifically. And I came to the end of my PhD, and at the time what everybody seemed to be doing who were doing a PhD in math was to go and join a large investment bank and make loads of money. So I did the same, which is not a very good reason for a career choice, but I did my time at the bank and discovered that it wasn't quite right for me. Some people thrive in that environment, some people less so, and I was one of them. So I was a little bit stuck with what to do next. And as it turned out, like my extracurricular activity was dancing. So I was having a sort of, I would say, semi-professional dance career, just performing in tiny venues around London and so on. So I also had this kind of dilemma of like, my academic background, I'm obviously quite technical, but in terms of what I did in my spare time and in terms of the people I was hanging out with, there were quite a lot of artists and performers and so on. And I always wondered how I could kind of bridge the gap between these two worlds. It was like a bit being stuck between two things. So I went back to college and did a conversion master's in computer science. Once I started realizing, like, you can actually use computers to do, interesting things. And also, when I was dancing, I was doing some fairly technical project. There was a lot of interest at the time for using new technology for performance spaces. And I did some quite interesting projects with interactivity and blending games and live performance and so on. So I did that, and then I came out of that. And also, as part of this master's, I did a little personal project, which it was fairly naive compared to what I'd done before, but it was basically attempting to capture pose. So it was very hands-on. It was in my mum's garage, having my sister as a model, and basically trying to set up a camera rig and capture with homemade sort of nylon socks on the joints as a sort of very, very basic motion capture suit. I think I had a budget of like £200 or something. But doing it from scratch, taking the shots with a camera rig and recreating this pose, and then doing some Python coding and Blender to create an avatar from scratch and kind of get into the same pose. And it kind of worked. I mean, it wasn't that far off the mark anyway. So I was really, I really loved that, and I thought I would like to do more of this. So when I went back looking for work, I landed a job in computer vision for a spin-out company at the university, which was interesting. But again, most of the applications tended to be for like tracking people in cameras for police, or and it was like a little bit, didn't feel quite right. I had some ethical qualms about this. So my next job I landed was in entertainment industry, developing a video processor for LED walls. And then I heard from Foundry that they were doing a project in 3D reconstruction with this kind of camera resectioning method for reconstructing a 3D environment from several camera views. So that's kind of how I ended up at Foundry, although I've now moved on to other projects. But so it's been a bit of a winding journey to get to.
And we love that. As She Can Code, we love to hear when people's careers are squiggly careers. And I never know what ladies are going to say when they say how they got into tech. And you are the first that I've heard that have said that you come from maths and dance and right through to a tech career, which is always so inspiring for our community to hear, that you don't have to have a traditional background, or you can have a traditional background. It doesn't really matter how you get into tech. That is still a really good place to work. So brilliant squiggly career journey.
Thank you for having me as well here. It's like really nice to chat about.
Good, thank you for being here. I know you're all super busy, so thank you all for joining. Sophia, last but not least, tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you. So hi, my name's Sophia, and I'm a machine learning research engineer at Foundry. I'm originally from Dublin, Ireland, and my background is actually in computer electronic engineering. And I did my undergrad and master's in this field in Trinity College in Dublin. My master's project was actually in the speech field. It's kind of had a speech focus and not the video field, but this did introduce me into the general kind of world of signal processing and kind of just sound and visual media, which really appealed to me and introduced me to machine learning too. And then after I finished my master's, I started working as a research assistant with another professor in the Department of Electronic Engineering, just doing more video related stuff. And I found that I really, really enjoyed working with video and images as such a tangible signal. You can see exactly what's going on. You kind of write some code and it makes a picture. And I just thought that was really, really cool. And it was through this work as a research assistant, through this professor, that I heard about a job at Foundry. And I've been here for just over a year now, so a little bit more new. But yeah, I suppose I've got this is a similar thread that we've all mentioned this, that we kind of wanted to fuse the kind of creative and technical aspects of what we were into when we were looking for work. As a person, I'd be quite into creative things as well. I just love anything that involves making something. I love drawing. I love knitting. I love cooking. I'm just a great appreciator of like film and any kind of storytelling, which is handy, I suppose. But what appealed to me about engineering was that it seemed like it was a bit of a mix of technical skills and creative skills, because it involves a lot of design, but it's also very practical. So it seemed like a good kind of general medium to explore. And similar to kind of what Johanna was saying, in school my favorite subjects were maths and art, and I just wanted to squish those together as much as I could. And for a long time, I didn't really know how I would do that. I wasn't actually interested.
Think that as well, don't
they?
How can you merge the two? And tech, I suppose, is the answer to that. A lot of people don't think working in tech is creative.
Yeah. Interestingly, in school, I wanted to do physics, and I wasn't allowed to do art and physics at the same time because they just didn't think that was something that people would want to do, which I thought was funny. But I suppose, it's kind of an interesting background in some sense, because I wasn't really interested in computers at all. I still wouldn't think of myself as like a very, tech literate person. But I really, really like the problem solving aspect of programming, which kind of, is what brought me to that in the end. And I do like the type of work we do in Foundry, and I think it does give like quite a good kind of marriage of these two things, because it is very, very technical. Like day to day, it's very technical, and you need these technical skills. But in the end of the day, it's a creative context. Like you're making tools for artists. There's like this visual context where what you're making at the end just does become an image that you can look at, which is really cool.
Yes, I love everything you just said about working in technology and working at a creative company. And I think the more that our community and more that women in tech hear that, the more that people will be interested in coming into to the tech industry, and because they know that they can be creative and work with some really cool companies along the way. Ladies, you all have such interesting backgrounds that is going to be a really interesting discussion today. We want to kick off with a little bit about your role on the research team, and what you do. So can we start with an overview of each of your roles within research, just to give some context for our listeners. So Mairead, should we start with you?
Yeah, perfect. So I guess as I said, I'm a research engineer on the machine learning or the AI side of research. And I think with the way our research works at the minute, at least within the machine learning space, is we're typically taking ideas from research and from academia and for academic papers, and we're trying to see how they would fit into our products and how they would answer something that the customer might need. So when I was thinking about, summarizing my role, I think it kind of falls into 4 different parts. At the very beginning of a project, we kind of sit down and do some research. So we read some research papers, and we might look at some articles or videos online and get a real sense of a particular problem or a new idea that's coming out in research. And after we've done that, we might get into a prototyping phase where we take that research and we try and get a bit of a tool up and running that's using that idea. So we might prototype it in Python and get a really simple tool up and running that maybe we tweak and change to make sure it works for our customers. So we might stick in the kinds of images or videos that we're processing in Foundry and in our products and see if that will work, see if we can tweak it and change the tool so that it gives better results. And when we've thought about things and maybe added some new features in, we have to take that tool and port it into C++. So all of our products that we're making in Foundry are all written in C++, and it means that we have to get them into that format. So once we have something prototyped and ready in maybe Python, we have to transfer that into C++. So that tends to take a bit of coding and sitting down and getting it perfected and a bit neater and cleaner. And then after that, we have the final stage, which is kind of the release stage. So once we have this in C++, we have it in our product, we probably are getting to the time where we're going to release that product into customers' hands. So it gets to the point where you're trying to make sure that it's running perfectly and we don't have any bugs. So we're into bug fixing and trying to fix any issues that we introduced at earlier stages, and trying to make sure that feature works really well and we've tested it really well, and we're really making sure that it's at the top quality we need to put it into our artists' hands. So it's kind of the 4, I guess, steps of what we do, or what I do as a research engineer, where we take these ideas from research and take them through all of those steps so that we can get them into one of the products we have at Foundry. So it's nice, interesting. You kind of get to switch over time. You kind of try different things, and your process changes over the course of the year from the beginning to the end. But it's a really nice way to work, I think, where you get to see it from the beginning and working the whole way to the end, that final step where you get it into the final product and get it released.
Yes, I'm sure that is really satisfying to have that process. It sounds like as well you're not just technical, that you have to communicate with lots of people to be able to do that and have great soft skills and communication skills as well, even though you said actually you code and you can do that, but obviously to get to the end of the project you obviously have to have great communication skills.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of collaboration. We on research are one part of our products, but there are other teams working and dedicated to working on those products as well. So obviously when we come and add a feature in, we have to do a lot of collaboration with those other teams as well, not only within research but within all of these other teams. You have to be able to explain what you're doing, and you have to be able to go into detail and make sure they know what's happening and how it works, and make sure that we're answering all the questions that, you know, need to be answered, and we're giving customers what they want. So there's an awful lot of, it's not just sitting down on your own and reading papers and coding. There's an awful lot of other soft skills, you're right, presenting and being able to explain a problem and explain your solution, and, you know, chat to other people and get their feedback and get their ideas. I think it's a really important part of doing research, is getting feedback from others, taking that on board, changing your thought process, and maybe moving in a new direction. So there's definitely a lot more skills than just coding and reading.
Yes, definitely a misconception about working in the tech industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. Johanna, what about yourself? Can you give us an overview of your job in research?
Yes, of course. So I actually have the same title job as Mairead, and we do similar. So like both are like, the work would be similar. So I'll just add a few more stuff. I think I'll just highlight again that it's quite a hands-on kind of like research role we have, meaning that in some research team, it's only kind of like blue sky research. So it's only like kind of like experimentations. And we are part of a team where we get to see the product from the start to finish. So there is something quite satisfying about it, but I guess it's important to know that we have a split in the time that we do. And I thought I would talk about like just meetings a little bit as well, because you were talking about soft skills. And I think that's so important for engineers to have soft skills. And for instance, I know that also externally outside of the company, we do go out there and we go to conference and we present our work and we present the new technology. And that's a way to show the work we are doing. That's a way to have people know that you are working on these things. And it's definitely very, very important to be able to go out there and share your work. So that's one bit that I know I enjoyed quite a bit. And we also are lucky to have meeting with clients, meaning that we do chat with artists. So we chat with people from Disney, Marvel, from ILM, which are the one which did the Star Wars movie, for instance. And we are able to get direct feedback from them on tools that we have put into the product. So I think it's really nice to hear stories about how they shot a particular shot and how they used what you've created. It really connects the dots between, you know, like the creative process and the technical one.
Yes. Oh, that is super cool that you get to have contact with those clients, and to also just to see, you know, the end product and the impact, and to hear their feedback would be so interesting, and to present as well. It's a completely different skill to be able to communicate what you're building to somebody else. Is a skill that you might not always think about in technology. Linda, what about you? What about your role in research?
Yeah, so I think we all got quite similar roles. So you know, to recap, it's the same for me really. So we investigate new technologies and we try to find out whether this is something that can be feasibly implemented into product, to productize. So and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So that's the interesting part of research. Like you know, if there's a new technology or there's a new buzzword or something, we kind of look at this and we have to try and make a decision. It's like, is this something that will provide value for our clients? Is it something that people need? Is it something we can do? What's the competition like? Are we in a good position to implement this? Or, you know, is it maybe a no-go area because it might be somebody else who's done a better job already? So I think the fun thing about working in research is we're given quite a lot of freedom. Like if you work on a product, you're selling a product and that has to work and that has to be bug fixed and so on. But sometimes we don't know. Like when we start a new project and at the beginning, we're not quite sure where it's going to end up. Is it going to end up being a product? Maybe it would be a slightly different product. Or maybe it can be repurposed, or maybe solve some other problem. So it's all quite open-ended, and it's like it's what makes the work interesting. It can also be frustrating at times. You might spend a couple of months investigating something and coming to the conclusion that, well, actually, this is not really worth taking this any further because, you know, yeah, somebody else might have done a better job, or it's not our main focus, or it's not something that is very valuable for our clients. Well, ideally, we like Mairead and Johanna were saying, we are in constant dialogue with our clients, and we have a lot of meetings, and just to try and find out what are the kind of problems that people encounter, and what are the kind of problems that people need solutions for. So I would say, if I were to sum up, like, we try to provide solutions for problems that people find in the industry, using new technology or sometimes existing technology, but in a new form. And that's, for me, it's less research paper than I think than the people on the AIR team. We kind of more dealing with things like optimization and connecting dots and connecting different technologies, and it might be slightly more hands-on.
Amazing. I love the fact that you said problem solving as well, because that is pretty much what working in technology is about. People don't always think that as well, that especially when people introduce themselves sometimes and they just say their job role, when actually what they mean is we solve problems for clients. And you don't always get that come across when you say your job role. So that kind of describes you perfectly, that you solve clients' problems, and that you have a lot of freedom to do that as well by the sounds of it. So yeah. Sophia, can you tell us a little bit about your role in research?
So I'm actually on the same team as Mairead and Johanna, but I suppose my role would differ slightly from theirs in that I'm kind of working on a specific project which hasn't been released yet. So I don't have any kind of maintenance or client meetings as part of my role yet. And mainly I'd say that in that stage of bringing something from academia to product, I'm just in a bit of an earlier stage of that development cycle right now. So there has been a lot of reading papers and just thinking about how to apply them to our problem. I have a whole lot of brainstorming and collaboration because we're not really sure what the final shape of this piece of technology will look like at the moment. So we have to be constantly ready to pivot and kind of change the architecture, change, I don't know, what it actually does. I don't know. So we're kind of, we meet a lot. I meet a lot with the other members of my team who are working on the same thing. And we do a bit of prototyping as well, which is kind of has been in Python, and we're just moving it to C++ at the moment. And we can add different bits and pieces to that prototype to try out ideas as they come up. Also involves a bit of designing machine learning models that we think will help solve our problem, training these models, evaluating these models. So it's really it's quite fluid at the moment, I would say. So,
yeah. It's nice to hear as well that you're slightly earlier in the process, because between all of you, it sounds like that's how you all function. You're all at different stages, you all do different things, but all of your skills come together perfectly to create incredible things at Foundry.
It's quite interesting. We were saying the other day, like, I think me and Sophia are like the ends of the spectrum. Like, Sophia is very researchy, and that's right, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, what I'm doing is more on the code side. So it can be quite varied. Like, it can be anything from spending most of your time looking at papers and going to conferences, or it can be spending a lot of your time just implementing things and writing code, and anything in between.
Yeah, so Linda, that's a great point, because I wanted to ask you, what does a typical day look like as a member of the research team and working on the AI team? You mentioned that you do a lot of coding. Do you do that not all day every day, but that's a big part of your particular role? Your day to day is quite heavy in code?
Yeah, at the moment. Also, again, it changes. So we've got some tasks that's more about investigate. So it might be more about looking how we can use an existing technology and integrate with a third-party system. And then you have to figure out how it works, how to get it, integrated, how to get it building, play around with it, maybe do a little prototype so you understand what it does, and then get it into your system. Or it might be looking at optimization, so measuring how fast something is, how performant it is it viable for what you want, will it fit the purpose? And then there's but for me, the bread and butter is really kind of writing code, I think, at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, which is really nice to hear, that you can have that technical side, you can write code. And actually, Sophia, as you said, you're opposite end of the spectrum. Your day-to-day is more research. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, actually, there is quite a lot of code involved, but I'd say there's probably more, yeah, just discussion and brainstorming makes up a really big part of my day at the moment. Like every morning, we have a meeting which is designed to kind of recap on the day before and plan the next day. But that ends up being a long meeting because, you know, we have so many decisions to make about just which we should include and which we shouldn't, where we should focus on, that there's a lot of my day ends up being just talking and planning what we're going to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose like on the programming side, I end up doing quite a lot of pair programming, which is really nice. Which is kind of like, yeah, pretty good exercise and like collaboration, but it's very good for early kind of development when you're not really adding to something that already exists. But if you're creating something that's a little more from scratch, just programming kind of as a team can really be helpful.
Yeah. And it's so if you're both opposite ends of the spectrum, Johanna and Mairead, I was interested into where you fit in. Johanna, what is your day-to-day like?
Yeah, I mean, it's true that it's a bit of an in-between. I'd say that we see like code every day still. So we would have like also like a morning meeting, like a stand-up type of meeting where everybody would say what they've done the previous day. And if there is like some questions or you're not sure where to go next, we would have a small chat. But there is much less brainstorming at this stage compared to Sophia, for instance, because we have things which are already in products. And I think like the kind of roadmap is a bit more set. It's a bit more clear at the moment. And we kind of have, okay, we are doing this and this and this. So I guess maybe it goes to the role as well. But generally, like some people or group of people would be working on one feature for like the next release. And so the day-to-day would be, if you're in the research phase, maybe reading papers and writing Python code to test some of the models out there. And in the development implementation phase, it would be more like C++. Like we do a lot of code reviews as well. So we review code written by other people because that's for the health of the code base. So there is a bit of that. And I think one of the things which is the most different from maybe high school or university or meetings that I know, like I didn't expect as much going into a real job, I guess, is that you have to have a lot of meeting to tell people where you are at, to collaborate, to have pair programming session. And all this it's very important. And it's much more than what you're used to when you are just at university, for instance.
Yeah, that's interesting to learn that actually you're going to be in a lot of meetings. And also so interesting, you said that you review other people's code, not just your own. Was that a surprise to you as well before you went in?
Well, I guess there is a lot of things you learn when you start a job. I think there was a lot of things that you didn't really know about many things. Like I feel the first few weeks, you're really getting to know what each company works with. And I'm sure that even if I was going to another company now, even if I feel I know many things here, each company would have their own set of skills. And so you would have to get used to the new system that people would be doing. But yeah, like I didn't know it was a thing particularly, I think, before joining. So it's definitely something that was something new.
Yeah.
I'd say that's one of the biggest like differences that I found between academic research. I mean, I only did kind of a couple of years of academic research, but the biggest difference between that kind of research and research in industry is, yeah, the communication. Like you really have to, like your code will be reviewed by lots of other people. You have to explain clearly what you're doing every day. So you really have to have those presentation skills. You have to be able to tell somebody what you've done. Whereas in academia, you can kind of be left, off on your own for a little while, and, people might not really check on what you're doing so often. I feel like the feedback is like really, really frequent, which is good. And it kind of like forces you to, I suppose, understand what you're doing a little more because you're going to have to explain it to somebody. They have to know what you're doing.
Yes, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That was actually one of the things that put me off a career in academia. It became a bit lonely. Like, it's just you and your supervisor in the whole world, and even like who you can talk to. And I thought, you know, it's actually quite nice to work with other people as a team and interact with other people. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
I would agree with
definitely.
Linda as well. I think one of the things that is nice about being in a team and working on a problem is that if you're stuck, everyone is there to help, because it's everyone's, you know, everyone is invested in getting this solved and getting this into product or getting this fixed. So it's really nice to know that you're not sitting on your own, battling things and trying to figure out on your own. And if you can't figure it out on your own, where do you go? It's really nice to be part of a team where you know that you can always ping someone and always ask for feedback and always spread the load, so that you're not independently working on a problem. We're all in this together, which I think is a really nice thing about doing research in an industry environment.
Yes. And Mairead, what is your, it sounds like you, at least you have lots of contact with people. What is your day working as part of the AI team?
Yeah, it's again very similar to what everyone else had said. I think Johanna had touched on it. We're again very similar in roles. I think that we, you know, as we said, we take, you know, read some research papers and then maybe do some prototyping in Python, do some coding in C++. I know in the last couple of months we've actually just released a new version of one of our products, and we spent quite a bit of time in the, you know, in the bug fixing and in the release phase. So we're probably just coming out of that phase now, but there was a lot of, you know, having an issue and trying to dig into it. So even though you're not necessarily writing new code every day, so you're not sitting down and writing hundreds of lines, you might have one line that's causing you a huge issue and you have to dig into it, and it can take you, you know, 2 or 3 days, you know, hopefully to kind of fix that. Yeah. Finding what line is causing the issue and trying to figure out how to fix it. So even though we're saying coding, it's not necessarily sitting down and writing. It can be about digging into a problem, even on the coding side, and trying to figure out what you've missed and where you've gone wrong. And again, those team collaborations are really important, because you might not know. We're obviously working with products that have thousands of lines of code in them, and we didn't write that. Like, a lot of other people were involved in that. So if you're having an issue, you tend to have to reach out to other teams and other people and ask, why would this be happening? Is there something else going on here that I'm missing? So again, that collaboration, even when it comes to coding, is really important. Even if it's not even on the research team, you have to make sure everything you're creating is working within the landscape of the product and within what everyone else is doing. So yeah, it's, even when we say coding, it doesn't necessarily mean we're down digging deep into, or, you know, writing for ages. It can be one line of code that we're trying to figure out for a while. So it's nice. It's there's definitely a change, you know, there's a mix of everything when you're working on something in research, which is great.
And I think that's something that's really interesting. Like that, I think when we are, you know, like in university or in high school, you kind of create project from scratch. So even if you had like some coding experience, maybe it was to create like a small thing that would, like, I don't know, generate, you know, a hello world type of like small thing. But when you join a company that already has a software, you have like, I mean, you say thousands, but it's thousands of thousands of thousands of line of codes. And you kind of have to attach yourself to that. So you have to learn from it. You're not creating something from scratch, which means that you have to follow some rules and understand. You have to try to understand how this thing was built. And I think that's different, because you learn to code in university by learning the basics and creating some small snippet of codes. And it's quite different to have to create, you know, a snippet of code within a page which has like, you know, thousands of lines.
There's a bit of learning in that as well, isn't there? Like, you kind of, every time, even if you switched company, we'd have to nearly start again, because every company and every product have their own set of rules and have their own way of building things. So it's kind of there's definitely a learning curve when you come into a company where you have to figure out how you're going to stick your code into this big block of code that's already there.
And yes, I love it. That takes a certain type of person, doesn't it, as well, to be that person who's always willing to learn and keep up with everything.
Yeah, I think one of the things also that you don't get prepared for in college is like all the auxiliary systems. Like in college, you learn, you know, C++ syntax or whatever, or, you know, but a lot of the work is just figuring out, like Johanna was touching on before, like each company have got their own build system, their own procedure, their own continuous integration. You know, where is everything? You know, where is GitLab? How does the whole code review process work? You know, there's all these systems that you have to get used to. That is different for you. Took me quite a while to get used to the build system.
Yes, a baptism of fire when you do leave university or college and coming to work. What I'd love to get at from you ladies is, I suppose there is a misconception of working in research, that it's literally just going to be papers, working on research papers. None of your roles sound like that, and you work across AI teams, real time, like everything sounds like it's going to be research papers, working on your own. Nothing you have said today sounds like that. I won't go to you individually, but ladies, can you pitch in on that? Did you, was that surprising to you when you went into research, or perhaps when somebody suggested the role of research, did you immediately think, yeah, that's going to be research papers and that's it?
I was kind of hoping the opposite. Sorry. Yeah. So I'm like, I definitely knew that I didn't want to do that type of research. I always said that I was never ever going to do a PhD. And like, although I very much enjoyed like the research as part of the master's, even when I was a research assistant, I was like, it was I feel like a research assistant is just like a PhD with no commitment. I was just like, I'm not gonna do this. I'm not gonna sit on my own for this many years, if I'm just reading papers by myself. So I joined on purpose a project as a research assistant that had like a practical aspect, and I was working with Enterprise Ireland, which is like a kind of funding kind of entrepreneurial project in Ireland. So we had to communicate with like these people and make external presentations, and our application was really practical. It's based in sports broadcasting, and I was like, I really liked that type of work. So when I was kind of figuring out where I would go next, I was hoping that it would be something that had a really practical aspect. So yeah, I think I kind of chose that on purpose because I knew that about myself, that I'd like to have things have a practical focus, and I like the collaboration.
Yeah, it was
Sorry, Mairead, I kind of cut you off there.
Okay. I guess I was going to say, I think like I had come from an academic background, and I'd been done like computer science research in academia, and I have to say I never found that any project you'd be working on would only be reading research papers. I think there was always an aspect of downloading someone's code and trying it out and testing it and seeing how you can improve it. So I actually don't think the research we do in industry is all that different to the research you would do in academia. I think they have very similar aspects. I think you're dealing with the same things, where you have to, be able to disseminate your work and be able to write it down and be able to explain it and be able to present it. And you also have to be able to solve a hard problem and take a hard problem and find a solution. I think the main difference is that, at least here, there's that final step where you have to perfect it, which you kind of don't have to do when you're in academia. You don't have to get it to be perfect and to be really quick and to fit inside something else. But I think research in general can be a lot of different things. I think we had kind of said you tend to be a jack of all trades, and I think whether you're doing that in an academic setting or whether you're doing that in industry, you do tend to have to tackle a lot of different steps, and it is more than just reading papers. I think if you read papers and you didn't do anything with the knowledge you had, what good would it be? There's no point in reading something and coming up with something and then not having anything to show for it. So I think research in itself, it does involve a lot more than just reading the papers.
Yeah,
It's I had some funny, we had to make these boxes for cameras again, like, so I spent one day covering boxes in colored, brightly colored pattern papers, to be easily discovered on camera. And I was thinking, like, I didn't really expect this when I joined, CDMA.
You'd never quite know what you're going to get.
No.
That leads nicely into the next. I want to ask you a bit about, how do you collaborate with team members to tackle complex problems? And you've all said your days are very, very varied. Linda, you had a very interesting day there. But how do you all work together to tackle complex problems?
Yeah, I think, like we said before, the biggest difference between, I found, with academia and working in an industry is, like, everything is a team problem, like Mairead said before. Like, we've got loads of ways to, like, every morning we have a stand-up where our team meets, we discuss what we're working on, if we're stuck, we can bring that to the table and see if somebody's got an idea. That might mean, like, we would do a bit of pair programming because somebody, with somebody who's working on something similar or knows about that particular part of code. If we have a very difficult problem and we're not sure, we might have a dedicated meeting when the entire team comes together, or sometimes several meetings. We had a bit of a tricky one where we weren't sure about what the right approach was. And we had a series of meetings where everybody so one person is usually driving it. So you do a bit of background research, you present pros and cons, possible solutions, and then people come back and say, like, well, that might not work because of this and this, or this might be a better approach and stuff like that. So
again, working together closely. And Mairead, you were speaking earlier about you're not a team that just sits on your own and works on your own.
Yeah.
As Linda was saying, you if there's a problem, you work together. You obviously speak to people all day.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, as Linda had said, those like daily meetings where we stand up for half an hour and we just share what we've done are a great way to, if you've had something that's been bugging you for an hour or two the day before, it's really easy to ask someone else. And we use like messenger systems like Slack or, like ways of pinging people and asking them. And that's company-wide. That's not even just within our research team. You can ping anyone in the company and ask them a question, and people are really great at answering and helping out. And I think that's really great as well, because as we said, research is one area, but we have to work with everyone else. So it's really nice to know that there's open lines of communication across the company. So if we had a problem that someone in a completely different team could help us with, they will, and they're always on hand to help. So I think knowing that there's help at every, anywhere is really nice. So that even if you're stuck on something for a while, you're not always going to be stuck on it. There's always ways of reaching out and solving it. So that's really nice.
Yes, being part of the culture where you feel like you can reach out to people makes such a difference to your day to day.
Exactly.
Yeah, you might have access to the person who actually wrote the code. So I don't know, with technical people, there might sometimes be a matter of like, pride that you want to solve it on your own, but you might actually have access to the person who wrote that code. So why battling it, when you can just go and ask them and, get it straight from the horse's mouth.
Exactly. Yes. I completely agree. Ladies, you're all obviously keep up to date on the latest technologies, and obviously that's an important part of your role. I want to ask you a little bit, what are some of the latest and most exciting technologies that research teams are currently exploring in the AI and real-time space? Anybody like to pitch in with that?
I could talk about this a bit, because I think there has been a lot of incredible breakthroughs in AI in the recent years, which has reached like everybody, not just people who were like researchers or engineers, but also like people working in other domains. And I'm thinking about the fields of generative AI. Like, for instance, a lot of people have heard about ChatGPT now, which is like this tool online which can summarize text, it's a chatbot which can answer. And that's basically a field which is generative AI, and it's so omnipresent already, but it was only released a year ago. And I think it's quite crazy to know that that's where we are now. And in the field of images, we have things like stability AI as well, which is a way to generate new images from, for instance, like just a text description. So you would say, oh, I want you to generate an image of a raccoon playing tennis at Wimbledon in the 1980s. And it would generate something which is working, which is like probable. And I think this kind of technology they're actually very disruptive. Like, they're changing the ways that a lot of different work areas are doing things. And they're quite impressive, to be honest.
Yes, a very creative example there from you. It's very specific. I agree, things are moving so fast in this area as well, and lots of people don't even realize that they're using AI anyway, and that it's invisible, and that's kind of also the aim of that area. Is there anybody else that wants to pitch in any other latest technologies that are coming about that you think our community would love to hear about in this space?
I guess I was thinking of, even when we think, I know Johanna had said about the amazing things that are going on with generative AI. I'm thinking even of things, because we're working in visual effects, there's an awful lot of things that I guess when we're watching films, or movies, we don't realize are happening under the hood. So if you've got things like making someone look older or making someone look younger, or adding makeup or enhancing their face, or, changing a background, and a lot of those processes required manual editing for years. Artists have been doing this for years, and it's required an awful lot of user input, and it takes a lot of time. And I think what is amazing is in the last 3 or 4 years, maybe even a few more, we've seen AI and machine learning come in and make that process a whole lot quicker. So it hasn't necessarily changed what we can do, but it's changed how we can do it. So it means that artists don't have to spend hours and hours trying to get a really good result. We have tools now that use machine learning that can, age an actor to make them look older, or, we've seen a lot of films where actors, look younger, and they try and make them look 20 or 30 years younger. And to be able to do that with machine learning now means that artists don't have to spend hundreds of hours tweaking something to make it look realistic. We're finally at that point where we have these tools that can do that in a shorter space of time. So I think we're nearly a lot of problems that are being tackled are problems that we've tackled before, and they're tools that we have similar tools already, but we're just removing that really hard bit that took an awful lot of time before this, and we're now making it easier because we can use machine learning to speed it up, or make the results that bit better. So I think that's another thing that's really exciting about AI now, is that even though it's not solving, maybe not changing in some ways the things that we're doing, it's really changing how we're doing them. And hopefully it'll make things a lot nicer for artists, and speed up the processes, and make their lives a bit easier so they can do other fun things with their time. So yeah.
Yes, that is a brilliant example. I have seen an example of that with the Foundry, and that is great to throw that in. Just aging an actor is a brilliant example of how you would work at Foundry with AI. Ladies, we are almost out of time, and I wanted to ask you all one last question. I could talk to you for another 4 hours on this, but we've only got time for one more question. I'd love to go to each of you and ask, what advice do you have for individuals aspiring to work in research teams that are focused on AI and real-time technology? Mairead, shall we start with you?
Yeah, I guess the one thing I wanted to say was, I think research is a skill that you can gain. So I think if you feel like you want to go into research and go into a job that allows you to, tackle hard problems, I think it could be good to keep an eye on the kind of things you do in your undergraduate degree or in a master's degree that might have a research element. So if you had a research project, or there was some way to bring in research within your studies, I think that really helps when it comes to applying for jobs and trying to go down the research track, even if it's within your current role, trying to see if there's any more researchy kind of topics you could tackle. I think it would give a good understanding of how research works and how to dive into a problem without panicking and without, being scared. I think it's about learning that you can jump into a problem and not know anything, but still tackle it. And I think it is a skill you can learn. And I think it's good, if you're thinking of jumping into research, to try and keep an eye on, maybe even just within your own role, or if you're looking at courses, see if there's any research elements to them. They would help you develop those skills if you want to get into that area.
That's great advice, because it sounds quite daunting. I must say, not working in it. It sounds like your day must be incredibly complex and quite daunting. But as you said, just knowing you can jump in without panicking, all is fine. That's brilliant advice. Sophia, yourself, do you have any advice for anybody who wanted to work in this area?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and it occurred to me that I didn't know this job existed until probably about 2 months before I applied for it. So I just didn't even realize that it was a thing that somebody could do. So my advice would just be to get talking to as many people who are already in industry as possible, and just attend as many external talks as you can. If there's some event that you think you might be interested in while you're still studying, just have a look at it and just talk to as many people in the field as possible, because you come across jobs that just you would have no way of knowing about otherwise. Like I feel even now, every day, I recently moved to London, and every time I just meet somebody at a party, they tell me they're doing something I just never even knew a human being was supposed to do. Like it's just so you find out about all sorts of kind of eclectic areas to apply, yeah, technological skills. So I think that's really important to just get as much exposure to people in the working world as possible.
Yes, yes, I completely agree, and something that we really advocate for at She Can Code. You can't be it if you can't see it, and the more that we hear about all of you wonderful ladies and your jobs and what you do day to day, Sophia, that absolutely will help other people think, I didn't know somebody did that, and that is a role. It's a great advice. Linda, yourself, do you have any advice for anybody aspiring to work in your area?
I think apart from Mairead's advice is really, really good. To try, if you get an opportunity to try it out, there's no substitute for actually getting your hands dirty and trying, But apart from that, like, yeah, don't give up. And sometimes it can be a bit of a journey. But every job role, or don't be afraid to apply for roles. And the more exposure, and every single step you find out more about the industry. Just keep going, and eventually you do kind of home in on a role that is what you really want to do.
Yes, I agree. The more research you do in that area, and as I was saying about Sophia as well, the more that you all share your stories, the more that we as a community of women in tech can see that there are some brilliant roles out there for lots of different skills as well. You've all demonstrated very different skills and how you all come together to create amazing things at Foundry. Johanna, yourself, last advice.
So actually for me it's probably quite a concrete example, but something I've learned about is like when applying for jobs, women are less likely to apply for jobs where they don't fit all the requirements. So like that's something I think to be aware of, meaning like if you know that you want to go into like I don't know, like movies, VFX, and you see yourself different requirements, women are less likely to apply for a job. If they are like, oh, I have this, I don't have this, they wouldn't apply. Whereas it should actually be, I have this. It means I'm already fitting, 80% of like these job requirements. And I think my advice would be that apply for jobs that you think are interesting, even if you think you're not matching all the points, because recruiters are looking for people who are like able to learn, to adapt, and just want to do job and are curious about the job. And I think sometimes it's not about having all these skills on paper, but it's about showing the willingness to learn and the willingness to just like create great things. So it's don't let that stop you. Like go and apply for your dream jobs and you'll get there.
I think
Brilliant
that's a great general advice as well from Johanna. Is I know that at times in a career in tech, for women, you can feel like things could be worrying. It could be like don't let anything stop you, I guess would be a general thing. Don't let any biases or worries or worrying about working in tech stop you from applying for a job or trying for a course, because I think if we had let any of our worries stop us, we wouldn't be where we are. So I think it's important to apply and try out things and go for it, because we can tend to differ or not do that. And I think it's important to don't let anything stop you, as Johanna had said.
Definitely to give things a try. You never know where it will lead. Ladies, we are already out of time, I am sad to say, but Mairead, Sophia, Johanna, Linda, thank you so much all for taking time out of your busy days to come and have a chat with She Can Code today. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing about all of your day jobs, so thank you so much for that. To all of our listeners, I encourage you to go over to shecancode.io to check out the company profile with Foundry. There are lots of more resources on there about what it is like to work at Foundry and why it is a brilliant career choice. But for everybody watching today, thank you so much for joining us. I think you'd all agree it's been an absolute pleasure to hear from all of the ladies at the research team at Foundry. So thank you so much, everybody, and we hope to see you again next time.